It is the primary responsibility of the local church in that sense. So that's our mission that we seek to do in that way. So just to remind you kind of how we understand our work and our role, drawing particularly from 2 Timothy 2:2, that as Paul told Timothy, the things that you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And so that's what we're seeking to do. And here's a picture from last year's board meeting. We have 3 board meetings a year. 2 of them are by Zoom, and then once a year it's in person. And so at the end of July is when we hold it. And this was from last July, so we're about to have our next in-person board meeting this coming July. Some of the ways that we've seen the Lord blessing us is in continuing to bring students and graduates. This is from just this month, the beginning of this month report. We now have, for the first time, over 500 students at the seminary, 510, which really is astounding. Again, it's a work of the Lord. I started working with the seminary on the board of directors 12 years ago in 2014. At that time, we had about 12 students. And to think of what the Lord has done through all these years. So this is not the total of students through the years. This is the number of active students that we have today, 510 students. We had graduation a week ago Friday, and 22 graduates. And then in the first quarter, that is the first 3 months of this year, we already had 71 more applications for students, which is, I think, the most we've had in a quarter. So seeing the Lord's blessing in these ways. To give you a sense of where the students are located, 22% of these 510 students are outside of the U.S. I believe they're in about, I can't remember if it's 17 or 20 different countries. So 22%, they need to be able to speak English, except some of our Hispanic students because of our MDiv in Spanish program. And then you can see the different regions. Of course, the Midwest is where the seminary is located, in Owensboro, at least its hub, and so that's 19%. But the Southeast, kind of where I'm located, is about 18%, but then there's also 10% in the South, and almost the same in the West, Southwest, and some in the Mid-Atlantic region here in that sense. So you can see where they're located in the U.S. and outside. And what about programs? This is one of the things that we also are thankful to the Lord, that over half of our students are Master of Divinity students. So seeking to be, or Bachelor of Divinity, seeking to become pastors. So 56, almost 57%. And then also that 10% of the pastoral studies. So it's about 66%, 2/3 of our student population are desiring to be in pastoral ministry. The other portion are Christians who want to grow in their understanding and knowledge that they might serve the Lord and His church better. And then here's kind of a listing of our different degree programs. You can also have some of these in a bachelor version if someone doesn't have a bachelor's degree. So our main program is the Master of Divinity to train men to be pastors. And then the Master of Arts of Pastoral Studies is kind of a smaller degree. Perhaps it's men that are not sure if they're called fully into the ministry, but they get a sampling of all the different areas of theology to help them discern those things. Perhaps they'll serve in their church as a lay elder, or perhaps they'll go on and actually get a Master of Divinity after they finish. And then the other ones are more for laymen. The Master of Arts in Theological Studies focuses on systematic or historical theology. And then Master of Arts in Biblical Studies, that's where they get to have Dr. Decker and focus on Greek, or Dr. Wilson focus on Hebrew. We have a Master of Arts in Biblical Counseling. That's been an encouraging, growing program. With men and women learning how to counsel. Again, we teach that if you're a layman, you're doing it under the authority of the elders of your local church, but with their blessing and help. And then a Master of Arts in Reformed Baptist Studies is really for maybe the Baptist student that went to a Presbyterian seminary and needs to sharpen their understanding of the covenants, for example, or really understand Baptist convictions and ecclesiology. So it's really kind of those Baptist distinctives put into a degree for someone who maybe they did an MDiv at Westminster or somewhere else, and they can now have these kind of distinctives and get a master's degree at the same time. Beyond the MDiv, we have 2 degrees. One is the Master of Theology degree, which is kind of for someone who wants to focus in on one area of theology. It's the way that we have conducted our program is that you're doing it with an advisor and kind of focus on writing a thesis. And we're thankful that Dr. Dechter is now our director of the THM program. And then, God willing, it's been announced that we're starting a PhD program and beginning that in January, Lord willing. And as I'll mention, some of the reason that we've pressed into these areas is both recognizing the need for the teachers or professors in the next generation, and also, as we've been doing work internationally, seeking to help Reformed Baptist churches in other countries form seminaries. They need their own indigenous teachers, and so these programs can help them as well. So that's some of the reason. Then, to note, we have different class formats, live semester classes, which are done via Zoom, or if you're in the church where the professor is, you could also come live. I have that happen for myself sometimes. Then live modular classes, which are 3 days, 4 days, like we just had it over Memorial Day weekend, a class on biblical counseling in the local church. And then self-paced classes, where these classes have been recorded and the student is able to work through on their own pace for a 6-month period or a 4-month period, depending on the class. Just to give you some examples of that, earlier this year in January, we had a class in a city called Clarkston, Georgia, on intercultural disciple making with Dr. Evan Burns. Evan Burns is one of the foremost scholars on Adoniram Judson. In fact, he's the only person in the world that I think has all the works of Judson. And he's trying to translate the last parts because some of it's still in Burmese, and there's only one woman in the world that still knows the old Burmese, an 80-year-old woman that is helping him to translate that last part. But he is a missionary in Thailand, and he lives in the remote part of Thailand. I actually visited him there last year, had worms for the first time in my life, which was interesting, fried, so it wasn't too bad. And he is actually working among a tribal group called the Lahu people, and learning their language, developing, helping them to sharpen their Bible translation. For example, they have a Bible translation, but it's not a good translation. For example, in the church that's there, their pastor had to step down, and they were going to make his wife the pastor. And he was like, you know, the Bible says that a woman shouldn't have authority over a man, from 1 Timothy and those things. And yet they didn't know that because their translation didn't say that. It was mistranslated. And so he's helping them to have a better, more accurate translation and blessing the people there. So he came to teach us more about how do you make disciples in an intercultural context. And our students came for that modular course for 3 days. And Clarkston, Georgia was chosen as a location because it is known as the most diverse square mile in the United States. Over 50 nationalities in 1 square mile. Because that's the place where all the refugees that came to the state of Georgia were sent, because that was the only place in the state in the 1970s that had English as a second language schools. So it became this very diverse place. So we had opportunity. You'll see a picture where we went to the apartment complexes and interacted with people from different countries to give them some practice in how to relate. And so it was a very helpful class. That gives you an idea of the kind of things that we do in a modular class. This coming fall, here's the live classes. A lot of these will be through Zoom, the Greek and the Hebrew, but also hermeneutics, historical theology, law and gospel and pastoral ministry. John English, Lee, and myself, our classes will be what we call a hybrid module, where we'll have some of the classes as pre-recorded lectures, some as a module where you come for a weekend. And so you should have both kind of aspects. We'll also have Baptist history, hermeneutics for counseling, counseling children and adolescents, and our writing research class. And history of Christian philosophy is the modular class in Owensboro, September 4th to 7th. This is kind of what our platform looks like if you're doing it self-paced. Just to give you a sense, you can watch the lecture and it kind of just has the whole outline of the class, and you work through your assignments. So that gives you a sense of kind of how a student can study at CBTS. One of the things that we also do as a seminary, you may know, is we have an annual conference. And this past March, we had a conference called Holy to the Lord, Pursuing Biblical Piety. And this year it was at our brother Jim Savastio's church there in Louisville. We had Dr. Joel Beakey, Sam Waldron, myself, John English Lee, but then also Conrad Mbewe and Jim Savastio. Just a blessed time together to consider these themes and to be edified through the preaching of the Word. Next year, we're actually going to be having our conference at the Ark, in the Ark Encounter. So if you would like to come and see the Ark for the day before, I think is how that's working, March 10th, and then the conference itself is the 11th and 12th, the topic of finding Jesus in Genesis, the book of Genesis. So that's next March 11 and 12. I mentioned earlier that we had our graduation a week ago Friday, and it was a special graduation. We had, of course, 22 students I mentioned that graduated, but it was a special graduation because your pastor was our commencement speaker. And we were praying for our brother at last year's graduation as he was awaiting a new heart, though we know he already had the most important new heart, but a new physical heart. And just so thankful how the Lord has answered your prayers, our prayers, and then to hear him and see him there was a great blessing to our seminary. So joyful time as those men graduated, and here's a picture of all those who were there in person, and very encouraging thing. The year before we had more graduates. I think we had 34. The year before that we had 20 graduates, but that's an encouraging thing. Each year around 20, between 20 and 30 graduates. We're hoping to see that continue and increase some as we encourage students to keep moving along and finish their course of study. One of the unique things about CBTS that I mentioned to you for your prayers is how we really do have a concern for the global church. And in God's providence, He has brought us connections with Reformed Baptists in other countries. We've had a lot of Reformed Baptist churches in other countries come and ask us if we would help them in the training of men in their own country. So it's not that we go looking for these things. The Lord brings them to us. And because of that, as we've started these affiliates, I'll mention more about that in a minute, we have students then that graduate from those shorter programs, which is like a Master of Arts in Reformed theology is what we call it, and they want more. But they're in now all these disparate locations, and we were thinking, how can we help them to continue on? So it was about 3 years ago, we decided, is it possible for us to actually put our Master of Divinity program into Spanish and have our recorded lectures dubbed into Spanish, and also have teaching assistants who would be Spanish speakers that could help with interaction with the students, facilitating questions, grading papers. And so that's where we came up with CBTS in Espanol. And our director for CBTS in Espanol is our brother Jorge Alfredo Rodriguez Vega. He is a pastor down in Santo Domingo, Ecuador, and was he was the second affiliate that we started at the same time, really, as the first affiliate there in Ecuador, the first affiliate being in Colombia. And he has worked to get a team together to translate lectures, to help with student admissions and counsel for the students all over Latin America. And this is the team. They're in different countries. Angel's in Bolivia, Rodrigo in Bolivia, Yober in Peru, Jose's in Ecuador, Luis in Venezuela, Leroy in Colombia, and they do all this work to translate the lectures where they'll get a transcript of it in English, and then they'll run it through, yes, artificial intelligence, but not stop there, but then actually go through line by line and make sure it's exactly the correct word. And then someone will then record that into Spanish, dub it into the video, and then it's fascinating. They actually use artificial intelligence to make the recording sound like the English speaker in Spanish. It's a fascinating kind of thing. Now, I'm not sure if this will work. Maybe you'll be able to hear it, but this is an example. Down, maybe it'll come through.
Eso significa que no puede existir tal cosa como la inerrancia limitada o la inerrancia solo en asuntos de fe y vida, pero no en ciencia e historia, o la infalibilidad, pero no la inerrancia. Si se admite algún error en el Antiguo Testamento, entonces...
Sam Waldron speaks no Spanish. I think the only two words he knows in Spanish is dos and minutos. Because he would say 2-minute warning, right? But so it sounds like Sam Waldron, doesn't it? But it was someone else who actually recorded the Spanish, and then using AI, it gives the tenor and the tone of Sam Waldron's voice to the Spanish. And so students get an experience where it's like the professor actually speaks Spanish. And the students have really appreciated it. It helps them. They enjoy that. But then the encouraging thing is not only do they, so here's a lot of the classes, for example, that they've already translated and dubbed and have the lectures. But they not only watch the lectures, but Jorge and another brother will have Zoom meetings with them to discuss the material. So they not only watch lectures, they'll watch lectures beforehand, and then they'll have an hour of discussing every couple weeks so that they can really understand the material and how does this actually apply in the local church? What does this really mean for pastoral ministry? And so it's been a real blessing. And we have a brother, because our brother Timothy doesn't quite know Spanish well enough yet. We have a brother in Colombia named Javier Martinez who is able to teach Greek and Hebrew live to the students through Zoom so that they can get the biblical languages as well. So that's some of the work that's going on. We have over 50 students now in Latin America in various countries that are MDiv students. And these men, we are hoping, will become the teachers in each of the affiliate seminaries in the future. Another thing that we've done as well is have a Spanish Covenant Conference, which we did our first one last August in Orlando, Florida. And it was well attended. You could see some of the pictures. And our brother Roberto Soriano, who's one of the pastors in Sam Waldron's church now, from Dominican Republic, he led the singing, and our brother Jorge plays the piano, so that was a sweet time. We had the theme was What is a Reformed Baptist Church? And Tom Hicks' book was just off the press being translated into Spanish. We were able to hand out several copies, so it was a blessed conference. Asked your prayers for our Covenant Conference in Espanol, which is happening this time in La Mirada, California. Again, July 30th through August 1st, around that time of year. And the theme this year is the beauty of Zion, order and glory in the church of God, of the living God. And Pastor Eduardo Flores, you may know him or recognize him. He's in Costa Rica, a pastor there in La Heredia in Costa Rica. And then myself and Jorge Rodriguez will be speaking on this theme, really, of ecclesiology. To come back now then just to our international partnerships, and I'll just kind of walk through these very quickly. In God's providence, what happened was in 2016, a pastor named Guillermo Gomez in Bogota contacted us and said, could you help us in training of pastors? And so we worked together with him, prayed, talked to our board of directors, and agreed that we would help by sending teachers every 3 months to teach a course and to have a 14 or 15 course program, which would take 3.5 years to complete. And so we started in 2016. Now, at that time, Jorge Rodriguez and a group of 4 other pastors had just become Reformed Baptist in Ecuador and knew Guillermo. Guillermo had been traveling to Ecuador to teach them about the doctrines of grace and help them. And when Jorge heard about what we were going to do in Colombia, he calls us up and says, "Can you do the same thing for us in Ecuador?" If you know Jorge, that's how he is. Sees an opportunity and takes the bull by the horns. So we actually started both of those about the same time then in 2016. We have now then gone through 2 cycles of courses with students. Again, 3.5 years per cycle. And so I was in Colombia last year for the graduation at the 2nd cycle. And we've already now begun our 3rd cycle with them. And our hope is by the 4th or 5th cycle, they'll have their own teachers. That's what we're aiming for if the Lord so wills. And so some of these graduates are now actually in the MDiv program because they've finished that first level. They have an MA, and now they're going on to get their MDiv. And if they have their MDiv, they can then become the teachers at the MA level. This was, Dr. Waldron was in, we have 2 locations in Colombia. One is in a place called Turbana near Cartagena on the coast. The other one is in a city called Fusagasugá, which is south of Bogota, which I love going there because it's at a Roman Catholic retreat center. And one of my classes I get to teach is the Doctrine of Christ and Salvation. So I have a whole lecture on justification by faith in a Roman Catholic retreat center. This past January, I was there to teach hermeneutics, and that's actually in that Roman Catholic retreat center. So we're thankful. The Lord is blessing. We've had several graduates in these first 2 cycles, some going on, and we're hoping by the 4th or 5th cycle we have teachers in Colombia that they don't need us to come down anymore, or at least not as many. There's Ecuador was next, and as I mentioned, it's Pastor Jorge. The capital city is Quito. A little bit west of that would be Santo Domingo. If you come down towards Guayaquil, there's a little city that's not on the map called Patricia Pilar, and that's where we meet for the modular classes. And again, we've gone through 2 cycles there. Here's some pictures of the cycles there in Patricia Pilar. Here's what the classroom looks like. And I mentioned how in the MDiv program we have these Zoom classes to kind of discuss the lectures. Jorge at the seminary there in Ecuador does the same thing. So while a teacher will come down for 5 days and teach a class, they will then re-watch the lectures over the next 3 months and have a weekly Zoom meeting to discuss the material. So really pressing into it. The 3rd place that the Lord brought to us was Cuba. Jorge was at a conference in the Dominican Republic and met a pastor in Cuba named Rene Benacourt. And as they were talking and Jorge was saying what was happening in Ecuador, this brother Rene said, "Can you do the same thing for us in Cuba? We really need training there." Cuba, as you may know, is in a difficult place right now. It's difficult to find food. It's almost impossible to find medicine. But there is a whole association of Reformed Baptist churches all across the island. And you can see here's a picture when Ron Miller was there. And a good number of students, they don't have much money. They don't have a way really to get books. Like one of the ways that we get books to them is we print them or we send them to them and they print them off like a regular printer and bind it, and it's a treasure to them. So you see the class there, the guy with the thumbs up, that's Pastor Rene Benacourt. And they also aren't allowed to actually have their own church buildings, so what they do is they get a house, kind of split it in half. The pastor lives in part of it, and the church meets in the other half, and that's kind of what this is. And here, Jorge was able to bring some books in and hand them to them, so that was good. The 4th place in location was Brazil, and here there was a man named Marcus Paixão who wanted to have a Reformed Baptist seminary, and a friend of his said, "I heard they're doing something in Ecuador." And so he contacted Jorge and actually came and visited Jorge in the seminary there when Sam Waldron was down teaching a class. And through those circumstances, they asked if we could help. And this is a seminary situation where there's 4 churches working together, one down in that city, Sao Paulo, another one then going up all the way at Belém, and then a city over here and a city over here. And those 4, and we rotate where the class is between those 4 churches. Here's Marcus Paixão in the blue shirt there next to me. And there's Mike Waters teaching, and Rex Simrad doing covenant theology. They have actually finished a cycle, and they have asked if they can continue with their own program in MDiv, translating, because they don't speak Spanish. They speak Portuguese. And so they're actually learning from what we've done with the MDiv and doing the same thing in Portuguese with our help, but they're the ones that are actually doing that. So we're not actually directly involved, just helping them to do it. Mexico was another one, and this happened when I was in Colombia teaching a class. 3 pastors from Mexico flew to Colombia to take the class, and they cornered me every meal. And they're like, "Can we do this in Mexico?" Like, I don't know. Let me talk to our board and pray and see what the Lord has. Came back, talked to the board, and they said, yes, we can do this. So we started in Torreon, Mexico. These are the brothers that are there. One of the times I was here, here's their church in Torreon, where we have the class. Daniel Scheider teaching a class on covenant theology for us there. Francisco, that's Pastor Guillermo Gomez in the blue who came to teach. So some of our teachers are coming from one Latin American country to another for Spanish speakers, which is a great blessing. Next, of course, was Costa Rica. Somehow, Eduardo Flores met Jorge, and the rest is history. So we have a work going on there. And then another brother got to know Jorge as Jorge saw the need for good Reformed Baptist books to be translated into Spanish, started a publishing house. Reformed Baptist books started spreading throughout Latin America, and then he's just getting phone calls as people are like, hey, we're a Reformed Baptist church, or we're starting a Reformed Baptist church. Hey, can you help us? And so now we have a seminary that we're seeking to help plant in Santiago, Chile. Here's some pictures from that. You can see. We also have some partnerships with Reformed Baptist in Africa. Kenya, there's been a Reformed Baptist movement really there for about 50 years, starting in the 1970s. They have a pastor's college, but it doesn't go to a full MDiv. So some of us have gone to help teach at the pastor's college. But now we have a partnership where some of their graduates will receive their credits and continue on in the MDiv. They speak English, so they're able to do it from a distance. Sometimes one of our teachers will go over and teach a live course for them there. So these are the 6 of the 7 students there that are in the MDiv program, or Murungi's actually in our THM program, so that they can become the teachers of the Trinity Pastors College, because right now they've been pulling teachers from the US and the UK. Similar thing is happening in Nigeria. We have a partnership there. I don't have time for the story, but this is a brother I taught back in 2014 in a trip I did in Nigeria, and a few years ago he asked if we at CBTS could partner with them to help train men to be Reformed Baptist pastors there in Nigeria. So we have 12 students there now who've been taking classes online. I will be going there June 15 to the 26th to teach a class and also to preach at 3 different conferences. Here's some pictures from Nigeria when Illumide was there. He's doing good translation work as well. We have some new partnerships that we've started this year in Peru. A new seminary has begun in Peru. Actually, this is in the church that Paul Washer planted. Kind of that church split. One went in a more Reformed Baptist confessional direction, and that's what this church is. And we had the first class in March. Zambia, we also have connections there with African Christian University. Again, they don't have a full MDiv, and so Conrad and Bayways talked with us to partner with them, and then 2 other Reformed Baptist works, Copper Belt Ministerial College in Lusaka. John English Lee was there last summer, I think it was, teaching a class on the Confession of Faith. I was in Lusaka and Ndola teaching on the book of Hebrews. There's their graduation that they had. Then Jorge has gotten to know Hispanic Reformed Baptists in Europe, not just in Spain, but also in Sweden, in Austria, and in Paris. They're Hispanic Reformed Baptist churches, and they've asked for help with training, and so opened that just this January. And Sam Waldron went in January to teach a class there. We also have a bit of a partnership with Heart Cry Missionary Society. Jorge works with them in different ways, and through that partnership, sometimes they ask some of our professors to go and to help train some of the men that they support in other countries. So we do that some in Southeast Asia. I've gone to Cambodia to do that. Vietnam, I was just there in April. This is actually April last year, and then this was April this year. Men who are hopefully becoming more sound in their theology, coming to Reformed theology. We also have connections and potentials for partnerships in all of these countries. Not sure if that's going to happen, but we're praying about it, seeing how the Lord leads. I just ask that you would continue to pray with us for these things. Really, the Lord is doing amazing things, and we know it's His power, His grace, and an answer to the prayers of His people. So we thank you for your partnership with us, and ask that you continue to pray for the Lord's work. Thank you.